Hey everyone, this is Ben back with you in the Midwest Model Shop. Hope you're all doing well. Here we are on the anniversary of the surrender of Japan to the United States in World War II. Depending on how you want to look at it, August 15th, 14th, that whole universal timeline thing. In today's episode, we're going to go ahead and cover the making of the base for the USS Missouri. Basically, I'm just going to talk through how I put this thing together. I did this once before for the USS Arizona. Basically the same process. We'll go through that. We'll get the propellers mounted. We'll get some ladders on. We'll get the superstructure glued on place. 01 through 4, parts 05 level I think go on there. Just some little details here and there. My apologies that this is taking so long to happen. It's summertime, the weather's nice, so that means unfortunately my work schedule's been way more busy than I would like at all, and that has been very irritating. And then of course obviously I have projects that I need to accomplish while the weather's nice at home that don't involve sitting in the shop, unfortunately. So anyway, this is what we got for you today, and hopefully we'll be able to get another one out pretty soon here. Let's jump into it.
Alright, so the first thing I got to do is figure out the width of the hull, which works out to roughly 6.5 inches. So I went to the local lumber store and picked up a piece of poplar that's 1x6, so it's about 5.5 inches wide, and I think about 12 feet long. First thing I have to do here is go ahead and measure it and cut it in half. I was so excited to do this part that, as you'll see right here, I accidentally forgot to support the piece on the right, and then my work flopped around, so don't do that. Next thing we gotta do is go ahead and glue the whole thing up. I like to use Titebond 2. It's not as expensive as Titebond 3. When the glue sets up, I think everybody knows by now that it's stronger than the actual wood itself, so if you were to go ahead and try and break this, what ends up happening is the wood fibers break away and you're left with your glue joint in the middle. So it's very strong and robust. You don't have to worry about it coming apart on you. This next part ended up being a little bit awkward. I should have planned it out a little better, but basically what I'm trying to do is match up both halves so that they're straight across. You don't want to have a little lip and have anything be uneven. There's better ways to do this than what I'm demonstrating here, but basically by clamping the two ends, it's close enough for what I'm trying to do. This board's already pretty straight, which works out nicely. So then all I gotta do is put the clamps on the sides to squeeze the joint together, get a nice fit. And what you're seeing me do here is just to double check to make sure it's pretty much straight and level across as best as we can. Once I'm satisfied with that, I'll go ahead and take off the end clamps and let it set up. Right here you can see I'm cleaning up the excess wood glue that squeezes out. Just a little bit of water and a rag is all you need and you're set to go. And then just set the board aside and let it dry overnight. 12 hours is fine, but you know, whatever. While that's happening, I need to go ahead and set up the saw to cut my little stands to hold the ship on. So what I'm doing is setting up what's called a stop block. Basically I'm measuring about 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch, I don't remember, off the saw blade, putting in the block. And then my dowel rod, which I believe is 1/4 inch diameter, you just go ahead and put it in position, make your first cut like so, and then all you gotta do is slide the board over and you're cutting the exact same width again. And it makes it really easy just to make repeat cuts at the same dimension over and over and over again without any trouble. Next thing you know, you'll have a whole pile of them. I didn't know exactly how many I need, so I just made a bunch. When you're using the saw like this, you're always gonna end up with a little bit of fuzz left over, and you're going to need to go ahead with some sandpaper and just clean up the wood to make it look all nice and neat, and then the pieces will be smooth and ready for paint. Here I'm just using some gloss black that I happen to have in the cabinet. Initially I wanted to use flat black, but since I'm going to use a gloss polyurethane to finish the board, this gloss will end up working out just fine anyway, and you're not going to notice it really once the whole ship's put together. So I was feeling lazy and I didn't want to get out my hand planes to smooth out the board. So this is the electric planer. Technically I'm doing this wrong. What you really should do is use hand planes on one side of the board and get it perfectly flat and level first. Put that side down and then let the electric planer do the work for the other side. But because this is not like a precision piece of material for like a cabinet or something, it's already pretty flat and smooth. I'm just going to run it through to get the high spots off and make sure everything's even. Once you make one pass, just lower it a 32nd of an inch and then run it through again for whatever side you're going to call the bottom. And what you'd end up with is a really nice, flat, smooth piece of wood that's ready for the next step. What I've done here now is going to go ahead and cut off the ends. No big deal. You can see it's not even, and you get it all set up. But right about this point in time is where Brian from BAS Dry Dock starts laughing at me because he sees all that excess wood right there. What I ended up doing is cutting this a little bit short. Not too short for what I need it to be, but too short for what I was intending for, and I end up repeating the whole project over again. But yeah, there's that wood I needed. Anyway, at this point, here's my router table. I'm using like a 3/8 inch round over bit just to put that nice curve on the edge of the board there that you're seeing, and that's going to be the finished edge. But what I need is a ledge right above that that I can go ahead and set my case on. As you can see there, I need a sharper bit, or I need to slow the speed down a little bit there, burning my wood. I think I need a sharper bit. Anyway, I put in like a 3/8 inch straight bit here, and what I'm doing is putting a ledge up on top of the board that you can see once the camera comes into focus here. And that ledge is where the glass for the case will actually sit to cover the ship. Moving on to finishing, again, Brian from BS Dry Docks. He's making fun of me because I didn't use a piece of maple. The ship's already heavy, so that's kind of part of the reason I went with poplar. But because I managed to get a piece of poplar, didn't have anything green on it, I used this cinnamon colored varnish, put a couple of coats on it till I'm happy with it. But you end up with this really rich, warm, reddish brown finish that I think is really great. This is what it looks like when you're all done. The next thing I got to do is go ahead and put on some polyurethane, which I did off camera. But yeah, let's get back into the shop and do the next part. So here we are back in the model shop, and I've got my board down, and you can see it's all glossy. Two things. One, this board actually is a new one. The one you saw in the previous clips ended up being big enough, but it was too short. I miscalculated how long I needed it to provide a space up at the front here for my case. Basically, the bow came right up on this edge, and there was room, but it wouldn't have looked right when we were done. So I quick went back, got another board, and repeated the same process. I did end up with a little bit of snipe here and here from the planer, and I had a bad week, long story short, and I didn't bother planing that off to smooth it out. Last comment here is, you see it's all shiny. There's 3 coats of a polyurethane varnish on here, and then I wet sanded it, and then I put a 4th final finish down, and it's, you can see the grooves from the planer in there, but it's super smooth, and I'm happy with this fine. Anyway, there's the pieces that we're going to use to glue in place for holding the ship up, and what I have to do at this point is figure out the arrangement that I want and then get them centered on the board. Then I'm going to go ahead and epoxy them in place with 5-minute epoxy. I like this Gorilla Glue stuff. It's a 2-part epoxy. See, I've got a little bit left over here. Just squeeze out even amounts, mix it up thoroughly, and then put a little dab down and glue your pieces in place. Once the bottom is done, you can go ahead and put some on the top and glue the ship down on top of that. So let's mix that up. Alright, so before we get too far along here, I went ahead and marked out where I want my pieces to go. I just used tape to get a center line, mark the spots, and then stuck one on here, drew around it. This doesn't need to be like super precise. It's just going to be super hard to tell if something's slightly off when you're done, and so this is good guidance. Gloves are a good idea. Get yourself a piece of cardboard. We're going to put down our 2 pieces of, our 2 parts of epoxy right here, mix them up, stir them together really well. We'll put a dab on the bottom of this and then stick them into position. In about 5 minutes, they're going to be all set up and dried.
Okay, had to move this way back so you guys can see what's going on here. So real quick, it's just 5 minutes and this stuff sets up and you're ready to go. So now things get serious. We have to apply epoxy to the tops and then set the ship on it and you're good to go. Quick comment, these two back here, they actually end up straddling the inboard propeller shaft housings by just, the tiniest bit. But when you look at it horizontally, they provide balance to the appearance. So even though they're not really supporting anything, they need to be here. And I could have offset them a little bit to do something to actually hold the rear end of the ship up, but honestly I'm not too worried about that. The next thing you got to worry about is your spacing. Obviously the initial thought is just get it even front to back, but there could be a little bit of artistic license. It might be better if you're going to put a plaque up at the bow, or if you're going to, just for display purposes, it might look better to have a little bit more room at one end or the other of your base. So just something to keep in mind. I went ahead and evened it out as best as I could. It actually will end up appearing as though there's more space on the bow than the stern. And that's because the bottom of the bow drops all the way down, probably 15 or 20 feet from the very, very forward part of the ship. But what I did is I marked a spot with a piece of tape so I can get an idea of my back and forth for when I go ahead and set this thing in place. Because you have 5 minutes, which is plenty of time, but you want to end up really, really close in the first place so you don't glop your epoxy all over the place. So we're not going to put epoxy in these back two. We'll put it on the rest of these and we'll lift the ship up and get it in place. Alright, epoxy's mixed up. Let's just go ahead and get our dab on here. And the height is going to vary just ever so, and as a result I just basically put a pretty deep, fairly reasonable glob right in the very middle as best as I can. This will allow it to ooze out whichever way it needs to, and most importantly make contact with the hull. This is pretty overkill. A lot of people, just go with like the single brass or the two brass posts in the middle, which is your traditional look. And I did this setup on the Arizona, and I really like the way it looked. And so I'm just gonna keep that up with the Missouri here, just so there's some consistency between the two pieces. Okay, so the epoxy's on and in place. The only thing I gotta do now is pick the ship up and put it on there. And I feel like it's important to say there's no pressure at this point at all. Easy peasy. Alright, dropped it down the front. I've got a little bit of reference in the back here. Center it up. That looks good. I've hit my mark in the front right here, but it's crooked at the bow. So just pick it up and straighten it out. And I feel like commenting that it's moving very easily at the moment. You have time to just pick it up and make an adjustment. It's not like sticky tack where it's just gonna go right down and that's the end. You got a few more. Just remember, when you do make an adjustment, try to lift up the bow or the stern, and let it pivot on the other end, because you don't want the whole thing just moving back and forth on you. Okay, it's looking pretty parallel, and my distance looks good. Just for your reference, from the bow here down to this edge is about 45 millimeters. And then from the stern post, which you can see way down here, straight down, same thing, that same reference edge, about 45 millimeters. And that's it. I think it looks pretty straight, honestly. It's basically right down the middle. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, let's just let it set up. Now that the ship's up here, I could do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, ever since I started the build, and that's go ahead and get the propellers installed we'll just go ahead and pop them on here, and then I'll apply some glue to them after the fact here. We'll just use a little Tamiya extra thin cement. Just drop it down like that, and they'll set up nicely. Okay, there are the ship's propellers installed. They spin outboard, basically. And someone's probably going to ask about the painting. To simulate this wear and tear, they're painted gold. Then I speckled some rust on them. Then I speckled a combination of green and mostly flat white on to give it the little wear and tear. And then top that all off with a flat lacquered dull coat to even everything out. And there you have it. Alright, let's do the next part. Alright, so as we make our way along, now that this is in place and I no longer need this handle here to pick up and move the ship around, it's time to commit to putting some parts on. So we're going to glue the beginnings of the main superstructure in place. It's our main deck, 01, 2, 3, 4, and maybe part of the 05 deck we've got. We're going to glue that down. And I need a glue that I could put on here that's going to grab on, set up nicely, and then give me some time to work with it if I have a problem. But I know long term is going to melt the styrene to the other styrene. For this, I'm actually going to use the good old-fashioned Testors orange or red, however color you want to use it, glue. This is a shout out to my good friend and pseudo-father Mike Quilty, who was laughing the other night saying that the only place for this stuff is in a paper bag. Anyway, we're going to go ahead, and it's actually going to work really well for what I need to do. Just dab the excess off on here. It's stringy, it's a mess, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in these corners here, and on a couple of spots where I know we're going to have positive contact with the styrene. You know, I want this down in the stick. It's kind of cool because if you've never used this before, it's very thick, kind of thicker than, a little bit thicker than medium CA glue. You do need to be careful because it will get stringy and run all over creation and make a big mess. But it's going to fill stuff in the way that we want to, so it's actually going to be the right application here for this this glue. Just try and keep your excesses towards the inside, and this glue works the same way as your Tamiya cement, the stuff everybody is used to watching me use. What it does is it will actually melt the styrene together. I know you're mostly just looking at my hand there. I'll get it out of the way. Alright. Give it a couple pushes down. There's some spots where it floats a little. Oop, one of my stairs fell down. I'll have to repair that. It could use some pressure all the way around it, but I'm not gonna get too worried about that. It looks good here. So there we go. We'll go ahead and let that set up. It'll take it probably a good 20 minutes to a half hour, and then it's just gonna be on there for good. Alright, so I've actually been waiting to do this part for a really long time. Just these ladders on the back, and yeah, let's drill the holes and go ahead and get the rungs in just like we did before. But had to put this piece on, and I waited until now because I feel like I'm less likely to bump it and knock all of the ladder rungs off now that we've got the ship secured here to the base, providing you with quite a bit of extra space to stay away from things. So let's do that. Alright, that's it. See if we can turn this around so you can see. Shaking everything too much. Sorry about my camera movements here, but that's it. And I guess I'm showing this to everyone right now because I think it's really cool. And once I paint this, it's gonna disappear. You're not gonna see the black runs on the brute striping going on up. But yeah, this is the Steven Seagal spot, right, where he climbs back up on the ship or something like that. Anyway, we'll get this painted up and move along. Alright, there it is painted. Actually, I guess you can see it alright. The rungs look nice, at least from here. And then if you change the angle, keep it in focus, yeah, they turn out alright. And then I guess after, I don't know, like a year and a half, I went ahead and finally got a coat of paint down in here on our magazine racks for the Bofors to go in the back. And that's good. So now all that's left to do is to continue on with everything in the back half of the ship. I want to get the next set of railings put in around back here, and then there's just a ton of touching up and things to do all along midship, getting the railings in, and then there's like your little ladders that go here and there, and you know, all that stuff that you couldn't have on until the superstructure was put in place. So those are all the little details we've got, and then there's a gazillion anti-aircraft guns that go in back here, a ton of stuff, cranes, planes, catapults. There's a lot of work left to do. Alright everybody, since you've been so patient, and it's been a really long time since I posted a video because of craziness and lack of progress, I figured I'd throw together, mock up everything I've got so far, and let you take a look at it. Especially if you're new to the channel, or you're thinking about building the ship, and you want to see kind of what's involved here. I'll try and keep everything in focus, but obviously we are not done. If you've never seen this build before, you may not be aware of the fact that it's huge. The ship from bow to stern, from right here to the very end, is 53 inches long. And this is basically what we've got going so far. A lot of little details left to do. A lot of little sub-assemblies left to do. But I feel like it's coming along real nicely. So anyway, that's all I've got for right now, folks. Thank you very much for your patience. I appreciate you watching. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this episode.